because he doesn't want to approve the budget?
We're almost live, so we're live.
You're supposed to tell us.
We're live.
Okay, are we ready, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay. All right, good evening, everyone. I'll call this meeting to order, the public meeting of planning for Monday, February the 8th via Zoom. Welcome, council members, and welcome to any public that are present. Is there any disclosure of conflict of interest? No, seeing none. Accept the agenda. Are there any?
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So moved by Michael Madden, second by Brenda Noble, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry accepts the public meeting agenda of Monday, February 8th, 2021.
Okay, are there any additions or deletions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Carried, thank you. To ratify the minutes, please, Sarah.
Moved by Councillor Manley, seconded by Councillor Wenzig, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry accepts the minutes of the public meeting of planning of January 11th, 2021.
Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, a vote on the motion, please. All in favor? Thank you, carried. Zoning amendments. 4A, Z03 2021. Sarah, are you reading the motion first, Sarah? Or after?
There is no motion for the public section, Carmen.
All right.
For the planning.
Okay. Go ahead, Kasia. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I will be sharing my screen. Okay, everyone should be able to see my screen now. So the first zoning amendment application Z03 2021. The owner of the subject land is Matthew Plurd, and the location is at 3771 Old Orchard Street in Apple Hill. The lands are designated rural settlement area, and the zoning designation is highway commercial. So this is a high-level view of the subject lands in Apple Hill, just north of the rail line. And here you have a close-up of the subject land. So it's actually an existing dwelling. It has been a single detached home for 30 years. And the purpose of the zoning amendment is to rezone the lands from highway commercial to residential hamlet for future marketing purposes. So as I mentioned, it's a single detached home, and this zoning amendment is purely administrative in nature. So the owner just wants to assure that it's zoned appropriately to match the existing use that has been there for 30 years. So to avoid potential future confusion when they sell the home, they just want to have the zoning as residential. It's the recommendation of the Planning Department that zoning amendment 03/2021 be forwarded to the Council of the Township of North Glengarry for further consideration and approval. Thank you.
Okay, Sarah, do you need to ask your 3 times, do you?
Kasia, were there any comments from the public? I don't see anyone on the meeting this evening.
No, there was no comments.
So I think we're okay, Karma.
Okay, so you're okay. All right, so if anyone has any questions, because we'll be back at this in the planning meeting, then you can ask them then, okay? On to 4B's Z04 2021. Go ahead, Kasia.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I will be sharing my screen again. Okay, so 04/2021, excuse me. So the owner of the subject land is Manuel Pinon, and the location is at 20500 Glen Robertson Road in Alexandria. The official plan designation is rural district, and the zoning is rural holding. Again, a high-level view of the subject lands in Alexandria, just outside the urban settlement boundary. Close-up of the subject lands. So the building in question is actually this one. From the outside, from the road, it appears just like any single detached home. And this is how it appears in the summer from the street, or maybe it's actually early fall there. Google Street View photo. So the purpose of the zoning amendment is to remove the holding provision on the subject lands, H, to rezone the lands from the existing rural holding to rural zone in order to change the existing use of the building from office to a residential use. So the proposed residential use, a single detached home, is a permitted use within the current zoning. So we're not changing the zoning, we're merely removing the H holding designation to permit this conversion. So the land in question is 3 acres. It's currently being used as an office for the business, and the owner is proposing to convert the interior of the home to a residential use. However, the office use will also remain for the renovation and excavation business that are on the subject lands. So right now, the use is a rural home occupation for the existing landscaping excavation business on the lands, and the owner is planning to live within the building and conduct his business within the building. So the properties in proximity to the urban settlement boundary area can have a holding designation in order to closely consider the servicing solution during the development process. That's why this property has had a holding designation applied to it in the year 2000 with the zoning bylaw. So just an overview of the PPS and NCG County's official plan. The proposed use and the removal holding is consistent and conforming with the applicable policies. Therefore, it's the recommendation of the planning department to forward the application for further consideration and approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Kasia. Sarah, there's still no public on?
No, there's no public. And
No comments from the
no
public.
comments.
And no comments from the public, Kasia? Okay, then we'll come back to this again later, next meeting. So no old business, new business, notice of motion. So Sarah, do we have an adjournment?
Yes, we do. So moved by Councillor Madden, seconded by Councillor Manley, that there be no further business to discuss. The public meeting was adjourned at 6:38 p.m.
All in favor of the motion? Carried, thank you. Okay, now we're on to the public meeting, the planning meeting rather. I'm just trying to read this on my phone here. Okay, so is there any, I'll call this meeting to order for Monday, maybe February the 8th, the planning committee meeting. Is there any disclosure of conflict of interest? Seeing none, acceptance of the agenda. Sarah.
Moved by Councillor Madden, seconded by Councillor Noble, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry accepts the Planning Committee meeting agenda of Monday, February 8th, 2021.
Thank you. Are there any additions or deletions?
No.
Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Carried, thank you. Ratify the minutes for the Planning Committee minutes of January the 25th, 2021.
Moved by Councillor Manley, seconded by Councillor Wensink, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry accepts the minutes of the Planning Committee meeting of Monday, January 25th, 2021.
Are there any errors or omissions? Is this the one, the minutes that have me down as Karma William? Can you see?
I'm not sure.
Yes, it does.
We can, if it's a typo error, we can.
Just a
certainly
typo.
do that. Yeah, that's not a problem.
It's been recurring typo. Okay, seeing no other comments, all in favor of the motion? Carried, thank you. Zoning amendments 4A Z03 2021. Sarah, do we have a?
Sure, I'll put it on the table. So moved by Councillor Manley, seconded by Councillor Madden, that it is the recommendation of the Planning Department that Z03-2021 be forwarded to the Council of the Township of North Glengarry for further consideration and approval.
Thank you. Kasia, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I presented it in the public meeting. Is there any questions from?
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Manley.
Just a curiosity question. Is this the former King George Hotel?
I don't have the knowledge that of the area, but it has been a dwelling, like a residence for the last 30 years, including the previous owner. So the owner didn't mention that it was a hotel in the past. So I would say no.
Well, if it's just north of the tracks, is it the immediate property that's north of the tracks?
Yes.
Okay, then that's the old King George Hotel. Yeah.
It might be.
Any other comments? Oh, shoot. Sorry, I lost it. Just a sec. Okay, if there are no other comments, all in favor of the motion? Okay, thank you. Carried. Zoning amendment for BZ04-2021. Sarah?
Moved by Councillor Noble, seconded by Councillor Madden. It is the recommendation of the Planning Department that Z04-2021 be forwarded to the Council of the Township of North Glengarry for further consideration and approval.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kasia.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I presented in the public meeting portion. Are there any questions at this time?
We're all good? No comments or questions? Okay, all in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. 5A, severance, B124-20 for information purposes only. Sarah?
So Kasia, there's no motion for this, so are you just presenting information to council?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, no motion. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I will be sharing my screen. So this is the severance application B124-2020. So the owner and applicant is Basima El Zahabi, and the location is in Maxville at 12 to 14 Maxville Main Street South, which is County Road 20. So the designation and zoning, the lands are designated commercial district in the county's official plan, and they are zoned village core area, which has both commercial and residential permissions. And you see the zoning compliance in front of you. So the yellow highlighted portion means it will need a minor variance. I will just touch on that briefly a bit later. So the purpose is to sever the lands for a proposed apartment building. And in front of you, you have the proposed severance. So this portion along Main Street in Maxville are the retained lands, and the remainder here are the severed lands. And you have just a preliminary site plan with the proposed 7 units residential apartment. We will not go into depth discussing the development. It's just to give you a brief idea of what is coming. So this development is coming back to council in the form of a minor variance for the number of parking spaces and the reduction in the lot area. So exactly in a month's period on March 8th, you will see this again in much more detail. So tonight is just to speak about the severance. So just an overview of the policy. So land severances for residential purposes are permitted in urban settlement areas in the PPS 2020. And likewise, the county's official plan permits consent applications for residential purposes in the urban settlement areas. So as I mentioned, the application doesn't comply with our zoning bylaw for 2 reasons. It requires a reduction in the permitted lot area for the severed lands and a reduction in the permitted number of parking spaces proposed for the apartment building. And that is it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from council members? So Kasia, we'll see details pertaining to the parking issue and the zoning issue then at the next
Yes,
planning meeting.
March 8th. Yes.
And And will there be a site plan agreement required for this development?
Most definitely, yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other comments, we'll move on to number 6, site plan development agreement. 6A, bylaw number 08/2021. Go ahead, Sarah.
Moved by Councillor Wenzing, seconded by Councillor Manley. It is the recommendation of the Planning Department that the site plan development application and bylaw number 08/2021 be forwarded to the Council of the Township of North Glengarry for further consideration and approval.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kasia.
Peter Mayor, back to my PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so this is site plan development agreement 08/2021. So the owner is James and Stacy Rowland, a location 7 Robert Street in Maxville. The lands are designated residential district and they are zoned residential 4th density. So you have seen this project through the rezoning amendment last year. They've been rezoned from institutional to R4. So the proposal is to convert the former school building on the lands into an apartment complex in 2 phases, 10 units in the first phase and 5 units in the second phase. So the site plan being presented today is actually for both phases. The site plan design, servicing, drainage, and landscaping is sufficient for the purposes of both phases. So a high-level image of the land location in Maxville along Robert Street, the former school building. And a close-up, so the lands have an area of about 2.3 acres, the former school building again. And finally, another close-up of the portion of the land that is part of site plan control being discussed tonight. And the portion of the land is about 1.4 acres that will be developed within the 2 phases. So this is a Google Street View image of how it looks today or last summer. And just to discuss the elements of site plan, so the lot is leveled and there is no proposal to further alter the grading. The access to the proposed development will be provided through 2 entrances onto Robert Street. So there's 1 existing driveway and 1 more driveway will be paved. In terms of parking, our zoning bylaw requires a certain amount of parking spaces. So they are required 22.5 parking spaces for both phases, and they are providing 24 parking spaces. And this includes 2 accessible parking spaces at the front, close to Robert Street. For the site plan, I will discuss some details. So as I mentioned, you have parking spaces here at the front, including 2 handicapped spaces over here. And then you have parking along the building. You can see those dotted spaces. These are all parking spots. Likewise here, these are parking spots. And then you have phase 1, which is the white portion of the building, and the hatched portion of the building is for phase 2. Every time you see this arrow, that indicates a pedestrian entrance to the building or access. So we have also 2 accesses proposed to the phase 2, over here and over here. Again, 2 driveways to access the development or the property. 1 over here and 1 near the south boundary of the lot. And you have the closed road allowance for Alexander Street. So right now it's just grassed area. Okay, we can come back to this definitely if you have questions. Okay, so for servicing, the development will be connected to municipal and sanitary servicing. Stormwater will be drained through the existing stormwater sewer on Robert Street. And stormwater management has been addressed through the site plan approval and the required drainage, and it's compliant with our township public works standards. So the surrounding uses, to the north, we have residential vacant lands. To the east, we have vacant lands. To the south, residential, west, residential. And elevation, so the proposed building has a rendering and it's looking quite nice. You can see, oops, sorry. So this is a proposed rendering shot from a corner of the building. They also provided an interior image. I did not include it because its interior design is not part of site plan control, but it can be said that it's really high-end apartments. They are quite beautiful. So in terms of landscaping, trees and such, so the lands contain a sufficient amount of open space as per our zoning bylaw requirements. The open space areas will be grassed, and the trees at the front of the land. So I will go back to my site plan. So you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trees. They are proposed to be removed to accommodate the driveway entrances and the parking areas. However, the owner has agreed to replant trees throughout the property as well as shrubs. So he's definitely willing to replace those trees and maybe then plant some extra trees to replace that greenery. So the proposed development has been designed to conform with all the required municipal and provincial guidelines, along with site-specific constraints and criteria. And the applicant has submitted the required site plan, drainage plans, servicing, storm drainage, and elevations as is required per site plan development control. Therefore, the recommendation of the planning department is to approve site plan development agreement 08/2021 and forward the application to the Township of North Glengarry Council for further consideration and approval. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kasia. Comments and questions? Yes, Councillor Manley.
Yeah, Kasia, could we go back to the picture, or not the picture, but the drawing there?
Site plan, yes,
Shows the parking.
there we go.
So I'm seeing parking for phase 1. Where is phase 2 parking?
So the total number of parking spaces that's required for both phases is 22 and a half for both phases, and they actually have 24. So it's contained throughout the site. Maybe it's not immediately adjacent to the phase 2 of the building, but it's definitely within the site.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. And we don't know what phase 2 is going to look like yet, right?
So the interior design, I anticipate will be very much the same. And I'm not sure about the floor layout. They haven't provided it yet.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Okay, other questions, comments? I can't see everyone right now, so just speak up.
Quick question.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor
Excuse
Manley.
me. I asked this today earlier, but just as far as the trees go, it indicates that he's agreed to replant trees. Do we need to have certain areas on the plan identified for trees to be planted, or is it just we'll plant trees in the future?
So it could be aligned with the site plan development agreement, a provision that says the owner is required to plant X number of trees in this location, or it could be both. He could ask his consultant to draw on the trees on the site plan.
Okay.
What are you requesting, Councillor Madden? Do you want to
Right.
see
A
where they're
line
going to
is
go?
fine. A line is fine, just as long as we know that there is something required trees to be replanted. To put them on the drawing now may be a little premature, just to see how their layout works for them as far as traffic flow and what's left around the edges. I just want to make sure that something's going back there, because it would be very, very bare without.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was I was a little dismayed to see that tree removal, because those trees, I went and had a look at them. They're 3 really nice mature spruce trees and a beautiful maple, I believe. So it's a shame to see those go, and they definitely will need, because that's a big wide open space there without any greens. So other comments, questions on this? It's a great looking development. That's what I say about it, for sure. Great asset. Okay, so if there are no other comments or questions, then no old business, no new business, notice of motion, and do we have an adjournment, then, please?
So Carmen, we need the resolution accepted or like voted on for the site. plan.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. The motion was read earlier. All in favor of the motion? Okay, carried. Thank you. On to adjournment.
So moved by Councillor Noble, seconded by Councillor Manley, that there be no further business to discuss. The planning committee meeting was adjourned at 6:56 PM.
All in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. So I guess we have a 5-minute recess then, do we? We'll see you all back in a few minutes then. So Jamie? You there, Jamie?
Yes, I am. I'll do the meeting.
You want to do the meeting?
I'll give it a shot. Yeah.
Okay, well, it's up to you. Just don't bite your tongue off.
Yeah. Okay, ready to go? So good evening, everyone, and welcome to our meeting. If I sound a little weird, my face is frozen from a dentist appointment, so please bear with me. I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Williams, seconded by Councillor Noble, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry accepts the agenda of the regular meeting of council on February 8th, 2021. Is there any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion is carried. And I forgot to ask for, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Okay, seeing none, adoption of the previous minutes. I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Williams, seconded by Councillor Noble, that the minutes of the following meetings be adopted as circulated. Regular meeting of council, January 25th, 2021. Regular meeting of council, 2021. Proposed budget, January 28th, 2021. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on to staff reports. We have administrative department. I have a motion moved by Councillor Noble, seconded by Councillor Manley, that council authorize staff to issue a request for proposal for development charges background study. Sarah, am I assuming you're taking this?
Yes, I am, Mr. Mayor. So good evening, council. So council will remember, as part of the strategic plan, that you set forth one of the items to do a development charges study in the term of the strategic plan. Staff have been communicating with a local consultant that does development charges studies, and unfortunately they're not available to do the study for us. So we are now coming to council for the permission to do a request for proposal for a development charges study. Now, council will notice that in the report, there's no financial implications. That's because these studies can range. I've seen anywhere from say 30 to 50 to 70,000, depending on the size, municipality, the scope of the project. So I will be putting together an RFP. There's quite a few online when I was looking and doing some research for this report for council. Just to provide a bit of background information on the development charges study, it's necessary to do the development charges. So that is why I included some of the background information. There was a presentation done by Calvin Pohl at the OEMC in, I believe, 2016. It's actually a very good description of what development charges are. I also included the previous development charges study that North Glengarry had, and they do expire after 5 years. So you have to redo your study every 5 years to make sure that you are still qualified to have DCs and what the amounts should be. So all the information is there for council to consider. And certainly we will be bringing back the RFP for council to consider the amount. And I have spoken to the treasurer, and we could look at different funds to pay for the development charges study. Now, in the future, when they do the DC study, often what will happen is they put forth a little bit of money from the DC charges to then fund any future studies, so that the money goes back into that pot. Unfortunately, that didn't happen with the expiration of the 2016 or 2006 DC study. So the report's there for council to consider. I'll certainly take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of council? Councillor Noble.
I had two questions. I guess it's sort of a two-parter. If I'm reading this correctly, it went in 2006, and then the next crew took it out in 2007. So I just want to know, is there anything to stop the next council from doing it? And then Jamie, because you were there, I'm curious, what was the reason? Why did they decide it was not worth to keep it?
At the time, most of council were against the development charges. We'd had almost no growth, and we felt that there were no other municipalities surrounding us other than North Dundas that had development charges. So we felt like we were going to be put at a disadvantage. So, and I think that's changed now. I think now all the municipalities around us are starting to grow and are definitely putting in development charges.
And then Sarah, there's nothing to stop the next bunch. It's just whether anything changes.
No, there's nothing to stop them from reversing a bylaw. Unfortunately, that's part of the disadvantages, I guess, of municipal government. However, I can speak to the fact that we have the strategic plan. I mean, it does sort of expire per se before the next, or after right around the same time as the new council comes in. But there is also the marketing and development plan that just went through, right? So, and that speaks to a lot of development charges and how that plan will actually support this development charges study as well. So I think we can say this council and certainly future councils and like the mayor has spoken to many municipalities in SCG as well as outside of that. So Leeds and Grenville and Prescott Russell, they have development charges, and you can see in the development charges or development and marketing strategy, some of those places that they had highlighted, they have certainly grown and had development charges with their, and they have significant amount of money in reserves from that. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Williams.
Thank you. Back in 2006, 2007, did they actually ever collect any development charges, or was there just a bylaw passed? Like, did the municipality actually get set up for that? Do you know?
I don't think so, Karma.
Okay. It's just, okay. So never, because I just kind of further to Councillor Noble's question there, once the study's done and we're up and running and actually collecting charges, I would imagine it would be more unlikely that a future council would overturn it. I would think, but
It was a huge election issue
was I?
that year.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Okay, moving on to Community Services Department, awarding of Glengarry Sports Palace Engineering and Project Management Services. I have a motion moved by Councillor Manley, seconded by Councillor Madden, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receives the staff report number CS 2021-02, and that Council approves the award of the contract for engineering and project management services for the Glengarry Sports Palace building upgrades and ice surface floor replacement in the maximum amount of $207,000 plus HST to Barry Bryan Associates, and that the mayor and the chief administrative officer are hereby authorized to execute the documentation relevant to the project. Welcome, Ann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as council will recall, we initially presented the refurbishment project of the Glengarry Sports Palace back in 2019, prior to requesting a grant from ICIP. At that time, we had asked council to allot $100,000 in the capital budget in 2020 for engineering plans, as well as starting up of a reserve fund. And council agreed to set aside $125,000 in 2020, as well as 2021 towards this project. So we actually issued the RFP in December and it closed in January. And we were able to obtain 3 bids. Of those 3 bids, unfortunately, one did not meet the technical response specifications. They had to qualify minimum 50 points. And unfortunately, there were some elements missing in the submission. So we continued on the evaluation process with the 2 remaining firms that had submitted. And as you can see from the evaluation grid, staff is recommending that the awarding of this contract go to Barry Bryan and Associates. And as mentioned previously, we did have $100,000 set aside for engineering plans. And we also set aside $100,000 as part of the grant request, because that was a qualifying element that would be funded 40% under the federal, 33.3% under the provincial, and 0.27% under the municipal portions of funding. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions on this report? Councillor Noble.
It's not really a question about the report, Ann. I guess it's the timetable.
So the timing for this, at this point, we were waiting for a response from the government regarding the ICIP grant. So we know that for us to be able to award the contract following the engineering plans, we would have had to wait. The maximum time would be early June, we expect, early June 2021. So according to this timetable, we're absolutely perfect. And we do have a whole year of closure plan to get this work done. So that should be very helpful in us being able to obtain competitive quotes.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Williams.
Thank you. Assuming that we're successful with the funding, what will North Glengarry's portion be? Maybe you said it and I missed it.
So we had actually asked for $2.2 million. Of that, we were looking at over 800 and some odd $1,000 from the federal government and close to $700,000 from the province, and the remainder would be ours. So we had presented a plan to council back in I think it was November 2019, whereas with the $250,000 in reserve, the $100,000 in engineering, we were looking at about, I'm going to say $400,000 that we would need to fund in other ways.
So that's not in the 2021 budget then, none of that?
So we do have $250,000 in reserve at this moment.
Okay, that would go towards that.
That would go towards that, as well as $100,000 already set aside for the engineering plans.
Okay, so we'd need another, well, that's,
We're looking at about $700,000 for the municipal portion or under that. So we're looking at the difference between those amounts. So about $400,000.
okay, so that would come from, then that'd have to be part of the 2022 budget then, I guess.
So part of the proposal was to look at funding under IO because we're eligible for that type of an expense under IO.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? There are none opposed. Motion is carried.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to the Treasury Department. 2021 operating and capital budgets. I have a motion moved by Councillor Madden, seconded by Councillor Wensink, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receive staff report TR 2021-05 regarding the 2021 operating and capital budgets, and that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry adopts the 2021 operating and capital budgets as amended from the January 28, 2021 budget meeting with a net municipal tax levy requirement of $6,236,439 as noted in the attached document. Welcome, Kim.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Special meeting of the council was held on January 28th. During the discussion, there were several items that were brought forward. It's in the report, but just to give it a high level, there was payments in lieu of taxes. Council asked how much that equated to that we did not collect, and it's about $6,800. Under computer fees and computer website hosting, none of those things were applicable to COVID. They were actually software and our financial system and website hosting, so there was nothing to move. The Glengarry Memorial Hospital had an advance in 2018, which finishes in 2022. There was also discussion about providing a tree donation of $500 from the sponsorship funds in this budget. Summary of wages for Public Works Department was brought forward to council, and it is within budget. Even though there is significant overtime, it's still overall budget is okay. There was a reallocation of roads, maintenance, and gravel resurfacing in the capital budget, which was reallocated and taken care of, but did not affect overall dollars. Changes in all this affect the tax levy in no way. So we're asking for a 0% tax rate increase. There's also a 0% increase in water and wastewater rates. So the overall change was a $99,920 difference, which was attributed to growth in their farm and residential rates. It did not affect any other assessment. So I've made the changes that council requested, and I'm just requesting that the 2021 budget be approved at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions, Councillor Manley?
Yes, first of all, thank you, Kim, for all your work on the budget. It was great. Just wanted to ask about, I know we had mentioned about going forward of putting in budget documents the previous year's actuals.
Yes.
Could we add that to that list or whatever as well?
Yes, I will do that for the next year's budget. At this point in time, it's a lot to get together, but I've noted it for next year's budget for sure.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Oh, sorry, I lost my screen here. Okay, Deputy Mayor Williams.
Thank you. I'm just wondering when we're going to have the discussion about which roads are going to be done with regards to the fact that it looks like our roads need study is, unless there's some magic there, I don't see how we're going to get that study in front of us in time to be able to make any decisions and then get, tenders out for road work and that kind of thing. Because we've got what
I think,
yeah.
Yeah, I think Deputy Mayor, what we'll do is we'll ask, and perhaps maybe in the coming weeks, we'll get something from Dean and Mike.
Yeah.
That we can look at, and perhaps maybe in March, we can go do a quick roads tour to go and take a look at these, and then, that way we can get them out to tender as soon as possible.
Through
Yeah,
Mr.
okay.
Mayor to Deputy Mayor, my understanding is that the Public Works Director now has already put a push on getting that roads needs study done so council can review it.
Yeah, okay, well, I mean, that would be ideal, of course, but it'll certainly hamstring the ability to get any of these projects on the go until we have that or otherwise make decisions otherwise. Because I think we have in excess of like $800,000 that is just, hasn't been allotted yet. Okay, thank you.
Roads tour would be handy.
Councillor Wensink.
Just a question again about the condenser for the arena. Sorry, I don't know if it's a question for you, Kim, or for Anne. It looked like Maxville Sports Complex was paying $18,000 to move the condenser back, and the value of a new one is $100,000. Just wondering what the plans are, if we would consider perhaps a new one for Maxville. I don't know what makes sense. It's an expensive item.
Anne?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, actually, I was just discussing this point with our CAO today, and I have a report coming to the committee of the whole, and I'll bring all the different options to council.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Madden.
Just a quick point on the roads, perhaps the roads tour, and if we can get a bit of an early indication from the roads needs study before it's perhaps published, that could contribute to what needs to be done this year. Just combining the two might be our best way to go and getting things done in a timely manner.
Yep, good point. Okay, any further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of the motion? There are none opposed. Motion is carried. Moving on to council statement of remuneration and expenses. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wensink, seconded by Deputy Mayor Williams, that the Council of the Township North Glengarry receives report TR 2021-06, 2020 statement of remuneration and expenses for information purposes. Yeah, that was a tough word to say with my mouth. Everybody knows.
You should ask Sarah to say it.
Go ahead.
The Municipal Act 2001, Section 284 requires that the treasurer of a municipality shall in each year on or before March 31st provide to the council of the municipality an itemized statement of remuneration and expense paid in the previous year to each member of council in respect to his or her services. Attached is that summary.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to Planning and Building by Law Enforcement Department, ExploreNet Communications Site. I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Williams, seconded by Councillor Manley, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receive staff report number BP 2021-06 for the formal request that ExploreNet Communications proposal be considered complete, and that the Township of North Glengarry approves the assessment of the process Xplornet Communications has undertaken to date for the construction of a 45-meter light-duty self-support lattice tower at 22295 Binet Road, Delkeith, for internet quality data transfer speeds. Welcome, Jacob.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pretty straightforward. I presented a report to council, I think just before Christmas, last meeting before Christmas. It was Xplornet wanting to put up a tower for internet speeds in the Dalkeith area on Binet Road. So basically on the 25th of January, their consultation period ended. So what they did is they consulted with all the owners within 3 times the height of the tower. So in this case, 135 meters around. And they also published it in the North Glengarry News. And basically they just received 2 comments. So one was actually 4. So when a person was very glad that the tower was being put up because the speed apparently up there are not very good with internet. And the other concern was really just for lighting of the tower. So the landowner close by was wondering if there were going to be some lights, those big towers. You see them usually around the 417 where it has something that turns up above. So it's not that tower at all. So those concerns were all addressed and the landowner was glad with the answer. So now Xplornet is basically just wanting to get council's full approval to actually start the process to construct the tower. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councillor Madden.
Just a quick one about the lighting, Jacob. I think in a report I saw that at one point it said there's no lighting on it. And then in the general information summary, it says tower lighting will be evaluated at the site selection justification report stage.
Yeah, sorry, maybe that wasn't clear. The lighting that the gentleman was wondering about was really at the top of the tower. The lighting she's talking about is really at road level, so at street level, where they want to have just a little bit of lighting around the base of the tower to actually access the tower. So it's not big spotlights up top. So yeah,
Perfect.
that lighting is for the evaluation is for really at the base of the tower, where it would not affect the close by neighbors.
In the trees, yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? That's a big smile there, Councillor. Motion is carried. Okay, moving on to planning procedural changes. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wensink, second by Councillor Noble, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry adopt the planning procedural changes as outlined within the staff report BP-2021-07. Welcome, Kasia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the Committee of the Whole directed staff to proceed with the planning procedural changes on January 20th of this year. This is for efficiency purposes. So the changes will include changes to the zoning amendment process. So there will be no planning committee meetings anymore. The approvals will go to the statutory public meeting, followed by the council approval at the following meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Manley.
So we'll be able to start our meeting at 6:45 then.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's going to change that much. Maybe 5 minutes difference.
So Councillor Manley will be cutting council's pay by 50%. Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on to site plan development agreement bylaw 04/2021. I have a motion moved by Councillor Noble, seconded by Councillor Madden, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry adopt site plan development agreement bylaw 04/2021 and the bylaw 04/2021 be read as first, second, third time and enacted in open council this 8th day of February 2021. Kasia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll share my presentation, just a brief overview of what was approved at the planning committee on January 25th. So site plan agreement 04/2021. So the owner is Ron Feore and the lands are at St. James Street in Alexandria. They are designated residential district and zoned R4, fourth density. And the proposal was to construct a 5-unit townhouse on the subject lands. So these are the subject lands with the 5.7 acres. And as you will remember, the developable part as part of site plan control is 0.9 acres along St. James Street. And there it is. So this is the site plan for the 5 townhouses with 3 accesses from St. James Street. And as I mentioned, the site plan agreement was already approved by the planning committee on January 25th. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? There are none opposed. Motion is carried. Okay, so agreement with Public Works Department, agreement with ExploreNet Communications, Inc. I have a motion moved by Councillor Madden, seconded by Councillor Wensink, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry authorizes the mayor and CAO to enter into an agreement with ExploreNet Communications, Inc. for the installation of an additional dish on the Alexandria Water Tower. And the council adopts bylaw 07/2021, being a bylaw to enter into an agreement with ExploreNet Communications, Inc. And that bylaw 07/2021 be read a first, second, and a third time, enacted in open council this 8th day of February 2021. Welcome, Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is to amend the existing agreement we have with the ExploreNet. ExploreNet approached us to add one more communication dish to the Alexandria Water Tower. The present agreement is for $400 a month. We're asking to increase that to $460 per month and an additional $25 a month cover the extra hydro, plus a 2% yearly increase to those rents. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Do we know if these rental rates are they kind of standard across the board? You know, do these companies pay other municipalities, you know, similar rent for that kind of installation?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I know Hawkesbury, I'm not sure the exact rate. They have quite a few up on their tower. I haven't checked with any other municipalities per se, though.
You know, just want to make sure that we're not undercharging, because I'm sure we're not overcharging.
Through you, Mayor. No, and it is prime real estate up there. It's a lot of people want to have that
Right.
place.
Good question. Are there any further questions or comments?
Just one more, please. How many of these dishes can go up there before it's full?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. They sent a sketch with everything that's up there now. ExploreNet have 12 dishes. There's some communication and some other ones up there. They're going to do a full inventory the next time they go up. There are some that have been abandoned, and if they are abandoned, they're just going to unplug them and take them down.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Madden.
Just out of curiosity, Dean, how many tenants do we have up there right now? And is there interest from other companies or other businesses to rent from us that space?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. As I mentioned, ExploreNet have 12. I had a whole diagram showing all of them. There was a Wire IE that they were asking. They were supposed to put one up there, they're going to move that across the road. There is some other ones up there. I'm not sure exactly. The fire department maybe have some up there too, I think. But they're going to do a full inventory audit of everything that's up there next time they're up there.
ExploreNet is going to do it?
Yes.
Okay.
Through our account.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? There are none opposed. Motion is carried.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to, thank you, Dean. Moving on to items under the consent agenda, RRCA meeting highlights, Community Development Committee meeting minutes and Arts, Culture and Heritage Committee minutes. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wensing, seconded by Deputy Mayor Williams, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receives the items from the consent agenda for information purposes only. Are there any questions on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? There are none opposed. Motion is carried.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, go ahead. Deputy Mayor.
I'm sorry about this, but you mentioned RRCA, and it reminded me that I forgot to ask a question with regards to the site plan agreement that we just passed. It in there, it has fees that the conservation authorities charge for all types of development. And I'm sorry, I meant to ask this at the time, but I don't know whether Kasia or Jacob can answer what, why they charge those fees.
I think Kasia has left the building. Jacob?
Oh, Kasia's left?
Yep. Sorry, can you repeat the question, Mr. Deputy Mayor? Sorry.
Well, it appears that every site plan agreement, because I read the requirements of the site plan agreement, and it states that both CAs, depending on where the development is happening, whether it's in the jurisdiction of the RRCA or the SNC, that they charge a fee to the person developing, whether it be industrial, commercial, or residential.
I'll definitely check into that. But if there are no, like what we did for the one in Maxville, there, the James Rowland one, they were consulted. So they're always consulted. Every time there's a site plan agreement, they're consulted. But from my understanding is that if they don't need to be involved, like if there's no studies required, or if they don't require any additional items to be evaluated or whatnot, there's no fee from them. There's no fee at all from them. It's just if there's something like, let's say if you're close to a river and they ask for a sediment review or a slope study or something like that, in this case, there would be fees from them. But if there's no study required on their part, they don't charge us for anything. But I'll definitely check into that though, but I'm pretty sure there's none. No.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Okay, no new business. Notice of motion. Our next regular public meeting of council is Monday, February 22nd, 2021 at 7 p.m. And we will be going into a closed session to adopt the minutes and to legal matters that advice that is subject to solicitor client privilege. So there's nothing else from members of council. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you to staff, and have a great evening. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Everybody.